Okay, folks, it is another Friday, and you know what that means. We've been building wins together all week, right? That's what we do. We build wins. But today is the day that we do it on air and bring another great guest to all my folks out there. And today is no difference. We've got the one and only Diana Nightingale, and you are going to love Diana. She's the wife of the legend himself, Earl Nightingale. If you don't know Earl, I've been putting some stuff out early in the week so you can kind of catch up on who he is. This man is somebody that I grew up with in my early career and listened to him on radio. Probably bought probably every single I don't want to say tape. It was a cassette tape, that he ever owned. And so you are going to love this. So don't go away. We're going to be right back with a great lady and somebody I'm just proud to consider a friend now, Diana. Don't go away. Diana, welcome.
Good morning.
It is morning in your part of the world, is it not?
Yes,
It's
like for a little while, yeah.
Yeah. What is it? Let's see. You're about 11 o'clock, I think, a.m. when we're doing this.
Yep.
Yep. Perfect. Perfect. The weather's good. Enjoying the summer of Arizona, Scottsdale, right? Scottsdale area.
Yeah,
Good
it's
and warm.
cooling down a little bit. It's been a year.
Yeah, I'll bet. So it's cooling down to about 97.
Yeah, about.
Yeah. Well, we it's getting chilly. I'm still in northern Michigan for about another month, and it's getting chilly all of a sudden real fast. So not my favorite weather, but it is what it is. So we'll get back to Florida before you know it, end of October. But
You don't
as
want to
we're
go now.
no, as we're recording this right now, it's we're sitting there wondering how much damage we may have. So hopefully not too much, but
Yeah.
yeah. So, well, thank you for coming on. I'm really excited to talk to you. As I mentioned in the pre-show there, or the intro, I I followed Earl from when I was just a young guy, just getting involved in sales, and it's just incredible to be able to actually have you on the show and talk about what you do on your own now, but also relive some of the great memories and some of the great part of growing up with Earl as you did. So really, Diana, tell us how I think the first place I want to start, if you don't mind, is you told me a few weeks ago when we was chatting. Uh, about when you and Earl met, and that's probably about as good a place to start as any, I suppose. At the beginning, that's where I like to start anyway. Tell us that story because that is like amusing. Don't mind me if I laugh again because it's pretty
No,
funny.
I still laugh at it. Yeah. I I started out in real estate in Florida way back in the day, and personal development was just starting to get popular. I mean, people
Mhm.
were starting to come out with all these tapes, and it was how to con your customers into buying something so you could steal all their.
Right.
And my broker said one day, one Friday night, as a matter of fact, he said, Diana, he said, I have something I'd like you to listen to over the weekend. And he said, and there's a book to read too. And he says, it's really great stuff. And he said, I follow it all the time. And he said, is it personal development stuff? And he said, yeah. And I said, I don't like it. And he said, well, what don't you like about it? And I said, well, it just goes against my grain. I said, basically, I think that, to be a success in the world, or to have people like you or to be part of society, you've got to just try to be the best that you can be and be very good at what you do, and and let your reputation and your integrity and your hard work be the factor that draws people into your life. And he said, no, he says, this you'll like this, you'll like it. He says, you just listen to it for me. I thought, okay, so I'm gonna do it now, person. So I thought, on Friday night, all right, I'm gonna get this over with. I'll listen to this stuff. If I
Mhm.
get a chance, I'll leaf through the book. I only had 3 kids, a house to run, and life in general. And so I did. I listened to the tapes, and I'm sure, thinking back, they must have been lead to field, perhaps. And then the book was a compilation of his radio shows, so they were short little vignettes. And I really resonated with everything that Earl said, the way he thought, his philosophy. it was all honest. It was
Hmm.
just, there wasn't anything manipulative about it. And so I enjoyed it. So Monday I go back to work and my broker said, did you listen? Did you listen? And I said, yeah, yeah, yeah. I listened to the whole thing. And he said, weren't you impressed? And I said, no, no, I wasn't impressed. But I said, what I was I felt like there are so few people that I really connect with that if I ever met Earl Nightingale, I think we'd be friends. And so he says, well, I'm gonna inscribe the book to you. He says, you keep the book. And I said, okay, that's great. 11 years later, I'm still in real estate and I'm selling timeshare. I've gone through everything from being a broker, having my own office, doing pre-construction. I did commercial real estate, and now I'm selling timeshare. And I'm up in Punta Gorda, and I was tops in sales, and my broker said, going to be a busy day tomorrow. He said, Earl Nightingale's coming in, going to address the group. And I had heard that he was a silent partner in the Fisherman's Village there, and there was a restaurant with his name on it. And I said, "So what time's the meeting?" Well, it was early, and I said, "I'll be in later because by the time I get up, drive from Fort Myers to Punta Gorda, busy day. You guys have got me on what they called a power wheel because it meant that I got to speak to more people."
Okay.
And he said, "No, it's mandatory."
Hmm.
Okay. So I got up the next day, and meanwhile, I had just moved into a new little condo, and I was wallpapering and painting and doing all that stuff in my spare time. And the night before, I was unpacking, and I just had this stack of books, and I carried them across the room, and I thought, I'm so tired. I can't do this. I mean, this will wait. Put the books on the table. Next morning, I get up, pick up my purse, and on the top of the pile of books is the book I got 11 years ago that said, "This is Earl Nightingale." I
Wow.
probably hadn't looked at that thing in 11 years. I thought, oh, I'll take it along. Maybe this guy can sign it for me.
Hmm.
So I go off to the meeting, and here's Earl Nightingale, and he was unimpressive looking. He had on a pair of old jeans and a leather jacket. He had a full beard and a mustache, and he looked tired, And I'm thinking, well, okay. So anyway, I'm up 100 times. I'm getting the best in sales, and if you sell $1 million worth of product, you will get a little plastic trophy this big
This
that costs
big.
10 cents at the dollar store. Saying, you're great. Anyway, so afterwards, everybody, of course, wanted to meet Earl and shake his hands and everything. And so I kind of lingered and I thought, I'll have him sign the book. So I handed him the book and he looked at me and he said, are you married? Which is not an unusual question because you always want to know, shall I make it out to,
Hmm.
Tom and Sue or whatever. And I said, no, just make it out to Diana. And he just stood there and he smiled and he said, would you like to be? And I said, what's that? The Ben Franklin clothes? And he said, no, it's called Asking for the Sale. And he signed the
Love
book,
it.
and I thought, what a weirdo. I mean, a man of his stature, with this cheap, cheap thing, you
You
know.
you were hoping for better from the Earl Nightingale, right? I mean,
I expected him to be a lot more professional. Yeah, I mean, I expected him to be worldly and be very stern and very and
mhm.
so it wasn't until later in the week that I realized that he was serious, and I just told him that I enjoyed meeting him, and we did. We from the first time we had dinner, it was like we had been friends forever. I was absolutely right in my assessment 11 years earlier that if we ever met, we would really probably click. And I kept saying, I'm really not interested. I've already had failed relationships. I don't do marriage well. I'm not going to do that again. I'm happy where I am. I got my home. I've got my kids. I've got my career. And he just would smile. He'd say, well, I'll give you a chance to get used to the idea because you are the one. I've been looking for you my whole life, and and I got used to the idea, and we got married a few months later.
Wow. So you succumbed to the brilliance of Earl is what you did.
No, you know what it was? It was interesting because all of my life I had a restlessness. And I would go, I'd go where I had to go, and I'd say, "I gotta go. I gotta. Where are you going? You just got here." And I'd say, "I don't know, but I have to leave now." And I was always on my way to somewhere, but I didn't know where it was. I just knew that I was never where I was supposed to be. And the first day that I flew out to California, because Earl was living in California and I was in Florida, so it wasn't like we could date and go to dinner and all that stuff. This was strictly on
Right.
the phone. And the first time I went out there and we were walking, and it was like a bolt out of the blue. And I thought, oh my God, this is where I have been on my way to my entire life. And I knew that that was it. And there was just this moment of recognition. He had it before I did, but yeah, I mean, we were absolutely kindred souls. I know that we, as my little grandson said when he was 4 years old, Mimi, we were before we came here. And I think that Earl and I were before we came here.
Wow.
And he always said he knew I was the one. And I think he always knew that I was not only the one for him, but the one that was probably going to be called to continue to do the work long after he was gone, because
Hmm.
that was his last request was, continue the work, keep it pure.
Wow. Yeah. That's I could I could listen to that story a million times. So thanks for sharing that. So you got married, and refresh my memory. Did you move out to California then with Earl, or did he follow you back to Punta Gorda?
No, I moved to California.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Started now. You spent a fair amount of time with Earl on his career, traveling with Earl. I think too, and spending as much time as you could together, and kind of set your career out. Did you keep your career in place during this time, or was that a little bit more just you and Earl for a while?
It was just us, but the interesting thing was that before I met Earl, and when I was living in Florida and still involved in real estate, I had gone to I was on the Lee County Mental Health Association, and I was their token female.
Hmm.
I mean, we're talking about back in the day where when women knew where they were supposed to be in the world, but then the rules changed, and you're supposed to have a woman show up once in a while.
Oh,
And I created a lot of trouble wherever I went,
no.
because they had an emergency hotline that ran from 9 in the morning till 5 at night, and I kind of had the idea that people really got desperate after 5 o'clock at night. I mean, you really don't contemplate the end of the world at 3 in the afternoon. And so I worked at that level, and then I also got involved with inner city girls, and was working with teen pregnancy programs at state level. And so when Earl and I got together, I was immersed in what he was doing. And the thing that really concerned me was the fact that, and Nightingale Conant became the world leaders in personal development. So they were marketing to the world. There
Hmm.
were no computers. You had to, if you wanted to publish a book, you had to go to a real publishing house and hope that they published your book. and
Right.
and you didn't just get to have a radio show. I mean, it was a different world back then. And but the thing that bothered me was that the company was marketing only to successful men. So there was a mailing list of maybe 200,000 people, but they were all executives. And back in the day, unless you were an executive, you didn't get to go to the conference or the retreat or whatever. And the more I listened and the more I learned, the more I realized that basically this information was for everybody. And of course, I asked Earl's partner, why don't you market to everybody?
Hmm.
And he said, those people can't afford our product. And I said,
Ooh.
all right, I'll start my own business then. And so basically, it wasn't too long before I created Keys Publishing, unlocking doors through education, making sure that this information was available to people everywhere, especially to young people, so that they would know that regardless of how they start out in life, that there are choices to be made. You're not stuck there. You don't have to be there anymore. You don't have to, believe that you aren't sufficient in the world. And so basically, I was busy doing that, and I was speaking along with Earl. Most of the time, it was him, but every
Mhm.
now and then they'd want more than he had to give. They'd want him to come in and talk about family issues or other things. That isn't what I do,
Right.
and so it was interesting because when we first got married, it was frustrating to me to not know what it was I was supposed to be doing with my life because I gone to work when I was 13 years old,
Right.
and there for a while as a single mom working three jobs, and suddenly, I have a housekeeper and a yard person, and Earl would say, "Oh, honey, that's okay. You don't need to do that." And I'd say to him, "What is it I'm supposed to do?
Give me a clue, right? Something.
What is my purpose in life?" And he said, "You're my wife." And he said, "I've never been happier or more productive. And so if I'm accomplishing all this, think of the lives that I'm helping." And I said, "It's not enough." And he would get upset over that, of course. So some time went by, and one morning I said to him, we were having breakfast, and I said, "Do you love me?" And he goes, "Oh, of course I love you. Why would you think I don't love you?" And I said, "Would you do anything for me?" And he said, "Anything, whatever it is, just tell me." And I said, "I want you to stop writing and recording and doing radio shows." And I said, and he said, "Well, what do you want me to do?" And I said, "I just be my husband." I said, "That should be enough. I love you, you love me, we're better because we have each other." And he started to protest, and he goes, "You just set me up." And I said, "Yeah, I
Yeah,
did."
you did.
But the interesting thing was about life, we need to watch for the clues, because if we're on the right journey, there are clues all the time that say, "This is
Right.
what you need to be doing." And I was born with the ability to I have very sensitive hearing, and I can tell when something isn't just right. And we'd go off to recording studios, and Earl would have written, weeks worth of radio shows, and then we'd have to get in the car and we'd have to drive to a studio and he'd have to record them, and then they'd do all the things that they needed to do in order to get them put on a record, to send to the radio stations, and then also for putting them into cassette form.
Mhm.
And so he would say, "How'd I do today, honey?" And I'd say, "Well, you're always great, but I could hear this hum, or I could hear this hit, or there was this." And he'd say, "Well, why don't you tell them?" And I'd say, "Well, I've tried that, but then they make me sit in the other room." I said, "I'm not allowed in the engineer's booth, because I'm too critical." And so it got to the point where he realized that, because I did have, a critical ear, that we started recording at home. And basically, this was the beginning of, what would become my future and my ability to take all of his work in the future and to be able to edit and create new product long after he was gone. So life just kind of unfolded. I can't say that I ever had a plan above, growing up in Ohio. My dog is making noises.
Well, that's okay. We like dogs.
I'm not taking you out right now. I'm very busy. And she's over there going, "Grr."
Oh,
And
I hear you.
speaking of a critical ear, going, what's going on here?
I say well done because I didn't hear him or her, so
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
good to hear.
she's here. But, Yeah, I my big goal in life was to grow up, get married one time, have babies, um, plant a garden,
Hmm.
stay in Elyria, Ohio for the rest of my life. And I knew from the very beginning, though, I wasn't comfortable there. Again,
Sure.
I knew I
You knew it.
felt, yeah, and that's one of the things that I tell, people. Listen to yourself instead of listening to everyone else. Listen
Yeah.
to what you're hearing, inside of you. Follow those thoughts that take you to a better place.
Yeah. That's that's very important because so many people, right? They get tied up on what friends, family, uh, people they work with, work for, want for them, right? But
Yeah,
it's I talk a lot about a little statement I like to make that I live is love what I do and do what I love, and I'm blessed to do that. But so many people don't, right? And man, you got to just find a way to if you're not happy with what you're doing, you either got to fix it or find something you are happy with, right?
yeah, and I think we're really blessed in today's world because we have that option. And
Hmm.
I say I was born on the edge because I was born on the edge of what was going to happen and finishing up what always had been. And I was having a real hard time not questioning. And of course, the generation I came from is you don't question. I mean,
Right.
there are rules, you have your role to play, their gender roles, and you don't question and you don't complain, and you grow up and you get married and you have children and you get a job and you pay off the mortgage, and everyone has problems and you don't complain. And so I guess that's why, the only thing that people were allowed socially that was socially acceptable was to complain about the weather. But, I had a really hard time because I was the fifth child, so there was a big generation gap between me and my oldest sister, who was 23, and I asked questions that they were never allowed to ask.
Hmm.
And I just knew that whatever had been before wasn't comfortable for me, and obviously it wasn't for a lot of other people too, because with that, we started to see all the changes that occurred late 50s, 60s, when people talk about the times that we live in now. If you weren't there during the 60s, those were times of real challenge and change.
We talked about that when we talked a couple, 3, 4 weeks ago now, and it just brought that back. Is we all think the time we're in is the most disastrous, the most stupid, the most messed up. It's never going to be okay. The kids are awful. They dress weird. They do all this stuff, and it's the end of times, right? But
Mhm.
I know that if you saw some pictures of stuff that I may have worn in high school, I would most people would have said there's no hope for you, right? I mean, but it all takes it all works itself through, right?
Yeah, I mean, I say thank you, God, for, not bringing me into this world back when I would have been a pioneer woman. We
Yeah.
complain about our flight being delayed, it's, instead of having to be in a covered wagon someplace,
Oh yeah.
not knowing whether the other side of the mountain was there or a sheer cliff. But yeah, I think that because change is so uncomfortable for us. So when
Hmm.
we see the world changing around us, or the way, the younger generation comes in, and the younger generation always thinks that the older generation has somehow betrayed them, let them down, didn't plan for them. But even if we did our best, we could never prepare them for the changes that have come along in recent times. I mean,
Well, go
yeah,
ahead.
I've got great grandchildren that are, 5 and 2, and you know, when my kids were 5, they did not spell their name or count to 100 or know the name of every dinosaur that ever lived. And I mean, they're amazing,
Hmm.
absolutely amazing. So, how do you prepare for that? I mean, we've just been amazed.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the compounding effect of time, right? Is as we keep going through time, we think we're at the, because it's the only thing we know right now is all the technology, all the things we have today. We we're arrogant enough to feel like this is it, right? But yet 10 years from now, whatever we're doing now is going to be old school, right? And the more it compounds, the faster that happens, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I talked to my kids, and I had them young, so there isn't that big of a gap between our ages. But at the same time, when I tell them, about when I was in high school or when I was growing up or whatever, and they go, "I don't believe that." I go, "Yeah, that's true." I mean, we didn't have Google, we didn't have
Right.
computers, we had, we didn't have any TV at all for a while, and then we only had 3 channels, and,
Mm-hmm.
that was pretty limited, and we didn't know. I mean, how are you going to know what other people thought or felt or were experiencing in their lives? You lived in your neighborhood, and
Mm-hmm.
you didn't have cars, and, you went someplace on a bus or whatever, and so, and that's just in a short lifetime, you know?
Yeah.
And it's amazing. It's just amazing. I love that I was born when I was. I mean,
Yeah.
'cause you got to know what it was like back then in the fun world.
Exactly. Well, and plus we had better music back then. I will take
Oh,
that
yeah,
stand,
better
right?
music, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but when you talked about the technology and where we were, I still remember, and you say it to a lot of young folks, and they're going, "Payphone, pay what do you mean payphone, right?" And I remember doing the road thing, and you stop at a payphone, and it's always 100 below zero, and there's ice all over the phone, and you're hanging out the window trying to punch the 400 numbers in, right? Then you can't get a hold of anybody. Then you got to call back, so you drive 20 miles to the next payphone. And I still remember the first time, Diana, that I got a I was leading edge. I mean, I was big time leading edge. I got a car phone, and we called it a car phone because it was one of those bag phones, right? You
Yeah.
didn't carry it with you. It was in the car. And I still remember I was so impressed with myself that I was calling everybody. Yeah, hey, this is Randy. I just want to let you know I'm calling from my car because I thought that sounded pretty cool, right? Except for at the end of that month when I got the bill, and I said it was Cellular One. I don't even think they exist, and it was like I didn't pay attention that you got like about 9 minutes or something with the plan, right? And it was like $400 or some stupid bill I ran up, which is a lot more money then than it is today, right? And like okay, I don't need to be quite that cool anymore because I would, but what's funny is then I went to the first phone I had to actually carry in my pocket. And it was the big old Motorola flip phone. It was about the size of it would
Shoot.
be like Don Smart's from Get Smart. You remember that show?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, it was so it's amazing. And now these crazy little iPhones that we have. I think that's got more abilities than we had to get on the moon. Right? It's
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, and you left out the other part too, where,
Oh,
when you're talking on a payphone and you ran out of time, you had to put more money in.
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Hold on, and you're digging under the seat and the ashtray, and
Oh, yeah. I said, they were one of my kids was asking me, so, like, what kind of jobs did you have when you were young? I said, well, I was a long distance operator. What's that? Said, worked for Ma Bell, and people, if they wanted to place a long distance call, I said they would dial 0 and they would get a whole panel of us, and
Mhm.
we'd have our little headphones on and the little jacks, and like, what was her name on Laugh-In?
Oh, yeah, I know who you mean.
Yeah,
One
uh,
ringy dingy. Yeah,
yeah,
that lady. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, and things have changed really, really quickly, and I think we're going to be fine. I think that the world has always been a pretty dangerous place to live, but we just didn't know what was going on in the next community or the next neighborhood or wherever because we just didn't have the communication
Right.
abilities that we have now. And I think sometimes we get so caught up in worrying about all the things that we're told, to worry about that we just kind of miss out on life. I mean, I just, I have a really nice backyard. Not a yard, it's a patio, but I have a gazebo out there, and I can see across the common area to the street beyond, and I'll see guys in the morning walking their dogs, and it's beautiful here. I mean, we have mountains, it's desert, it's gorgeous,
Hmm.
and they will be on their cell phone.
Yeah.
their head
Yeah.
is down, and they're walking in, you know, some of what most people don't get to experience, and they don't
And,
even see
and
it.
they're not experiencing it either, even though it's right in front of them, right?
Yeah.
That's yeah. We all do that. I'm guilty of that sometimes. And I saw a picture a while back on Facebook or someplace, and I don't remember the exact statement, but it was along that same lines. There's like all these young people, like maybe watching a parade or somebody famous, go by. Every single one of them got their cell phone up, right, to try to get the picture. And there was one lady more in our more of an age group that we would be in, and she's just standing there happy as can be, just watching, just
Hmm.
actually taking the moment in, right? And she had no picture to go take home on her cell phone, but she had the picture in her mind, right, that was there forever because she saw it live. They didn't even see it live; they saw it through their phone, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, and and I think that it has created a lot of distance between people. I think people have never been lonelier than they are now.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Earl and I used to go up to Alphen Cove up in Alaska fishing. And after he passed away, I was invited to come back, and I said I didn't know if I could go back without him. First of all, it's pretty remote; you have to fly in. And so I decided I would go, and I'd take my grandson, who was 13 at the time, and I thought this will be great. But I was still a little reluctant. And so the the host, said, "Well, Diana," he said, "it's going to be different this time. It's not going to be like just a bunch of fishermen, although I loved the fishing part of it." He said, "Because there's a photography group coming out of San Francisco." And he said, "You've heard of Art Wolf, haven't you?" And I said, "Oh, yeah. He was the, big wildlife photographer and, worked for National Geographics and, filmed everything. And he was going to be there with this group. So he said, you can go off with them or you can go fishing or whatever you want." I thought, this is great. So sure enough, one day, every day, as a matter of fact, several days, we went out in little boats with Art, and he was telling them what they should be doing and how they should set their cameras and all of
Mm-hmm.
that. So we were in this one particular place, and he's telling everybody that, this is what you need to do, and make sure you're getting this and you're getting that. And he said, "Diana," he says, "you're such a rebel." He said, "You don't listen to anything I say." And he said, "I just hope that if we run into a bear, you're going to sacrifice yourself for the good." He said, "Because you don't listen." And I said, "No, the problem is," I said, "Art," I said, "everybody's looking through this
Mm-hmm.
at one thing." And I said, "And without my camera, I see it all."
There you
And
go.
I said, "When I get home, I will have the memory of, the vastness and the beauty of it." And I said, "And everyone else will have, this tiny little picture."
Right.
And I think it's important to, I mean, I'm not saying I don't take pictures. Believe me,
Right.
I mean, I've got boxes of pictures that I need to one day convert to something that we can actually look at. But yeah, I mean, life is so precious, and it's so fleeting. And that was one thing that Earl and I did. We knew, we knew that we might not have forever.
Mm-hmm.
And we made every day really important. And
Yep.
we got married in such a short period of time that I always felt like he had continued to court me for the rest of our marriage, which was very nice.
Yeah, perfect. That's awesome. That's awesome. So maybe a final question, because you've been very kind with your time, and we've already discussed that, and I'm going to take you up on it because I don't forget too many things. That we'll do this again sometime. So
Good,
you
good.
promised. Okay,
Yeah,
heard it here. So what of all the great writings, all the great talks, all the great radio programs, all the stuff that Earl did all those years, for the younger people, because I grew up with Earl, right? I grew up listening to that stuff, and but for the younger people that may have not listened to it at all, or maybe just heard the name, what what's the give me the Diana that knows Earl better than anybody? Why do you want to listen as a young person today to Earl Nightingale? Is that a fair question?
yeah, because um, and I have to say something before I answer the question. People
Sure.
have often said, you really need to have, a program. You really need to have a thing so that everybody can follow you. And I said, I thought you listened to The Strangest Secret,
Yeah.
because they said the whole idea behind living a successful life, and living a successful life, best definition is feeling good about yourself and what you're doing. And if you do, you are successful, because whatever you touch is going to turn out. I mean, it may not, happen immediately like
Right.
Edison, but you're going to be always on the right track because you believe in yourself. And that's the one thing that Earl always talked about was, not following the followers, that everybody, that's what we say. Well, they said,
Hmm.
those people, well, everybody knows. And I mean, I run people off like you wouldn't believe, because I say, well, everybody isn't accurate, because I'm part of everybody and I don't
Right.
believe that. And I want to know who they are and those, and so you need to question. Don't go blindly through life following people because you want to feel popular, or that you want to feel like you belong. If these people were so great that you're eager to follow, if they were so great, they wouldn't need a bunch of people following them. They'd be out doing their own thing. And you need to identify who you are in life and be happy, and realize that at the end of the day, you're the person that you wake up with and you go to sleep with, and the other people come and go in your life. And when times get tough, and I'll tell you this from experience, those people, they will not be there for you.
Yep. Good. That's an awesome point. And that when you say they, that really was thinking as you was talking. Isn't it amazing? Everybody has they, right? There's always these theys, and I've never met they. I don't know who they are. Right? I don't know who they is. Everybody says, well, they said. Well, they said if you do this. They said if you don't do this. But I never know who they really is, right? And I think that's your point. They is a fictional thing that kind of doesn't exist particularly. And what I loved your point is just be yourself, because if you impress yourself, right, you're happy with yourself, you develop the life you want for yourself, uh, you won regardless of whatever they think, right?
Yeah, because there are a lot of people who surround themselves with people that they think are their friends, and that cracks me up. I mean, to the point that I just don't even do social media, because 10 million people are not your friends. And I want to know, why do they have all this time to be on social media?
Yeah.
Why are they not doing something with their lives that would make them happy and maybe even rich? Who
Hmm.
knows? You know, I mean, it's just
Well,
a lot of people that think that if they can get somebody, and people don't necessarily agree with you. And I met someone the other evening, and this woman, I mean, we were introduced, and she jumped up and she says, "Oh my God, I can't believe it's you!" And I'm thinking, I don't know you. And she said, I heard that you lived here, and I'm a big follower of Earl's. And she said, I'm so excited. And I said, I'm sorry to hear that, because I'm just a person. And I said, and I don't want to have to live up to your expectations as something other than what I am. And that's the big thing. I did a memorial for Earl after he passed, and it was photos of him in the real world. Well, there were a few of him, speaking perhaps, but I mean, he was just a guy,
Mhm.
and we were just people. And people are quick to build you up into something you're not, and then when you don't live up to their expectations, they love to take you down and say, "Oh, well, you're really nothing." Well, yeah, it's really nothing to begin with. I mean, not that nothing is nothing, but I mean,
Right, I know. That's
greater
funny.
greater than being just
Right.
like everyone else. We all that's the big thing that I learned in all my world travels, was basically we are all the same.
Yeah.
We all hunger for the same things in life.
Beautiful. Awesome stuff. Well, so we're going to do this again sometime.
All right.
Any last things before we get out here? Because you've been very willing to give me some time today, and I appreciate it. Wes always pops up for me because I forget things sometimes. Should ask questions. Is there anything before we get out of here today that you're going, why in the heck didn't Randy ask me this? I was waiting and waiting and waiting. We went 43 minutes and he hasn't asked me. What did we miss today? Knowing we'll do this again.
Yeah, well, we will do this again. I don't know. I don't have a canned speech.
Hmm.
I do podcasting, and I've been on a lot of podcasts as guests. I'm always happy to because it gives me an opportunity to speak to audiences that I might not have an opportunity to
Hmm.
speak to otherwise. I think, if anything, I just want people to know that. We live in a world where decision making is important today. That we always have choices, and it's important to ask questions. There you go. You got to ask questions about
Right.
life and who you're following, and ask yourself, is this good for me? Um, Everybody needs to be in equitable relationships, even if they're superficial, whether they're jobs, whatever it is. They should be equitable. One person should not be expected to give up who they are or give more than the other people involved.
Excellent. Couldn't have ended any better. Diana, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Randy, I'm so happy you reached out to me.
Well, and I'm so happy that I told you're gonna find a little kick, because I don't know if I had a chance to tell you this. So I have two boys, and my youngest son's been in sales forever, and he when I told him, I says, "You will not guess who I talked to this afternoon." He goes, "I don't know." He talked to a lot of people. I don't know. I said, "Do you remember the name Earl Nightingale?" He says, "Remember the name?" He said, "I used to steal your cassette tapes and try to figure out how to play them." And so he said that he was like more impressed than I think anybody that I was actually talking to you on the phone. He says, and he's 41. Okay, so he's not old but not young, right? And he gets what Earl talked about, is my point. And keep bringing that stuff out all the time. Don't ever stop.
Yeah, and I always chuckle to myself when those people tell me, "Well, Earl isn't popular anymore." And I go, "Really? Gee, that isn't what the guy said that sent me an email from Afghanistan. Who's over there, fighting and telling me how, next to his conversations with God every day, he listens to Earl, or the man that I just corresponded with in Ireland, who's youngish." And he would love to be on my show. And we had to figure out how to get Earl's stuff to him, and or the young woman in Home Depot who plays Earl's stuff in the car every day when she takes her kids to school, so that they grow up listening to those kinds of things. So, you know what I say? You can't save the world, but there will be people that belong to your audience that will find you. You will gravitate towards one another. And these are the people that you continue to serve, regardless of what everyone else thinks or says.
Yes, beautiful, awesome stuff. Diana, we'll chat again. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
I
Randy.
appreciate you. All right, awesome. Hey, look at that, 45, 46 minutes of awesomeness. Was it not? Easy for me to say awesomeness there. I'll enunciate a little better. Anyway, the one and only, the wife of Earl Nightingale, Diana herself, and she is definitely one of her own. She does some great things, and you want to follow her on the internet. Follow her on anything that she does. She's on podcasts. She's doing a lot of Earl's work and still putting it out there. You've got to listen to Earl. If you don't, you've got to. It's one of the things that has to listen to Randy. Telling you, you got to do it. Anyways, what are we doing next week? Well, we're going to build wins all week, and then we're going to have Mr. Iconic himself, Chris Whitehead. Chris is a guy that again, we've become friends via social only. We've never met. We're going to sometime, somewhere. But Chris is a lifetime business guy, owns two or three businesses that he's built from nothing. He's a coach, he's a trainer, he's a speaker, and started his own podcast now this recently. And as a matter of fact, you're going to love him when he's on. His brand name is Iconic, because that's what he talks about, is let's just go live our best life and be iconic. So don't miss that. Next week, Chris Whitehead. Until then, remember, make today your best day ever, right? Until tomorrow. Cheers, my friends.